Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. We're a part of Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. I'm your host, Cain. Appreciate you guys for making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every day. You can follow us, download us, subscribe to us, all that for free wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. We've got a fun show coming up today. Some names in the transfer portal that Tennessee could explore and potentially add to the roster, because it is now officially transfer portal season for college basketball, with especially Tennessee now that you're out of the tournament. So we'll get into that here in a matter of seconds. In segment 2, this is inspired from the General's Quarters over at volquest.com. Going to go through each position group for Tennessee, and I'm going to say right now if it's better or worse than what it was in 2023. We did this a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to do it again here about 3 weeks into spring practice to get a new perspective. It's coming up in segment 2, and then on threes, Andy Staples and Jesse Simonton made the case for Tennessee to be a college football playoff team. Going to hit on that and more here on a Thursday, Locked On Vols. So here's what we know right now about Tennessee's roster. We kind of went over a little bit of a roster reset on Monday's show, but just as a reminder, Tennessee is losing 3 fifth-year seniors. Dalton Knecht being the most notable. He's a consensus All-American this year, one of the 5 Wooden Award finalists for National Player of the Year. That's obviously a huge loss, goes without saying. Santiago Vescovi, who was down this year in terms of scoring, but has been in the program for 5 years and brought a whole lot to the table in terms of defense and just did a whole lot of things this year that, you know, Tennessee doesn't win the Texas game without Santiago Vescovi, that's for sure. And then Josiah Jordan-James, who has provided lineup flexibility, has provided scoring at times, and it's been such an inaugural piece to this roster each of the past 5 seasons. So 3 pretty big losses. And, a question was asked on the VolQuest Mailbag podcast this week, could Tennessee conceivably be even better next year? Because you still return a lot, and you see the progress and development that comes in this program if you're a 3rd or 4th year player. And yeah, I certainly see that. Tennessee does bring back a lot. The front court's going to be really, really good, albeit if Adu and Awaka and Estrella and Phillips and everybody remains kind of where you're at. But you're losing Dalton Knecht, and he's a scorer. He's a go-getter, and he's a guy that can impact a game at the drop of a ball. So that's going to be really, really tough to overcome. Tennessee, the portal needs are a shooter and a wing player. That could be both. Dalton Knecht was both, right? But you need some backcourt help. You're losing 3 fifth-year seniors. You are set to bring in a 4-star point guard in Bishop Boswell. And, in this day and age, you never truly know who's going to be back on your roster. Who are some of those potential Porter defectors from your current roster? I'd be shocked if Tennessee doesn't lose at least one player to the transfer portal. That's just the nature that we're in right now in college athletics, not just football, but college basketball as well. Could Freddie DeLeon be transfer portal bound? Could DJ Jefferson be transfer portal bound? Wouldn't shock me if either one of those guys would. I'm not trying to start anything. I'm not saying I've heard anything. Just those 2 guys didn't play much this year. And I do believe they hold a lot of promise. So nonetheless, it's portal season, and here are some names compiled earlier this week by Rob Lewis and Grant Ramey over at volquest.com of some guys that Tennessee could potentially look into who are currently in the transfer portal. Darlington Stone Dubar. I know you guys make fun of me because of my pronunciation sometimes. I've never heard of this guy. He's from Hofstra. He's in the portal, 6'6", 207 pounds, was a junior guard this past year. Spent the past 3 seasons at Hofstra. First season he played at Iowa State. He averaged a career high this past year at almost 18 points per game. Played in 33 games, shot 53% from the field, and nearly 40% from three-point range. I think that he could obviously be a guy that could help as well. Those are 2 names. Another name would be from Milwaukee, B.J. Freeman. 6'6", 200 pounds. He's a wing player. Spent last 2 years at Milwaukee. Started playing in community college at Dodge City back in Kansas in the 2021-2022 season. This past year averaged 21 points per game in 32 minutes. So that's another name. Aaron Scott from North Texas. 6'7", 200 pounds, a wing player, averaged 11 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 41% from the field, 37% from the line. So his numbers in terms of scoring a little bit down, but he's one of those stat sheet stuffers that I like to call, Josiah Jordan James, or a lot of times throughout his career, Santiago Vescovi. That would be Aaron Scott of North Texas. We'll go to Terrence Edwards Jr. from James Madison next. 6'6", 190. He's a redshirt junior wing player. He was a Sun Belt Player of the Year. He led James Madison in scoring in the NCAA tournament, averaged 17.3 points per game, 42% from the field, 34% from three. Again, these are names that kind of fit the bill of what Tennessee's after right now in the transfer portal. Scorer, wing player, backcourt. Eric Daly, Oklahoma State, 6'8", 230 pounds. He's actually a forward. Averaged about 10 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists per game. He started 32 games this year. St. Thomas is from North Colorado. And this one's going to be interesting because, of course, he played with Dalton Knecht. 6'7", 200 pounds, about 20 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, played in about 35 minutes per game this year. He spent 2 years to begin his collegiate career at Loyola Chicago. So technically there might not have been some overlap there. Maybe he didn't play with Dalton Knecht, but nonetheless, coming from Northern Colorado, and his name is in the transfer portal. So again, this does not mean Tennessee's going to bring in one of these guys they can't bring in all these guys, but here are some names that are kind of in the transfer portal that I believe, and obviously, Grant and Rob over VolQuest.com, as they compiled this list earlier in the week, believe that Tennessee could be having discussions with and exploring those possibilities. But you need a scorer. Nobody, in my opinion, is going to be Dalton Knecht. You didn't bring Dalton Knecht in to be Dalton Knecht. Nobody thought that whenever Tennessee signed Dalton Knecht out of Northern Colorado, that he was going to turn into a National Player of the Year finalist, the SEC Player of the Year. You take it. You loved it while I was here, and you'd love to duplicate that. But I think if you go into this offseason with the mindset of going and finding the next Dalton Knecht, I don't think that's a good mindset, because Dalton Knechts aren't everywhere. As you can see, not everybody in the country was blessed to have a Dalton Knecht, but Tennessee was this past year. 2 names that they mentioned from the prep ranks that can be late signees or maybe reclassify. Trent Perry, 4-star point guard, decommitted from USC after the coaching change. That's a name to keep an eye on. And then this one they say is a stretch, but a name to maybe keep an eye on. Liam McNeely, 5-star small forward. He decommitted from Indiana, reopened his recruitment, drawing interest from, wait for it, Kentucky, shocker, Kansas, UConn, Houston, among others. He's from the state of Texas. And obviously, if you could get that type of value late in this cycle, you don't say no. You say, all right, come on, open the door, and we'll find a place for you. So interesting the next couple of weeks. Of course, there's a Lady Vols coaching search right now for the Tennessee women's basketball program. But for Rick Barnes and his staff, you're going to have to re-recruit your roster, find out who all is going to be staying here, say goodbye to your seniors, and try to bring in some guys who Rick Barnes likes through the transfer portal, older guys who are experienced, but most importantly, they got to be a cultural fit. And I think we often just kind of gloss over that because we don't think it's a big deal. But I guarantee you that's a big deal for Rick Barnes and his staff. If they don't feel that this guy can fit the culture of what's inside the program, they're likely not going to be a part of the Tennessee basketball program. So nonetheless, those are some names to maybe keep an eye on, and we'll continue to update that. And when Tennessee brings some guys in on visits, I'll tell you who that is, all that and more. But that's kind of a start as Tennessee begins this transfer portal cycle for men's basketball. Hey, when we come back, better or worse, we're going to go position group by position group for Tennessee football and discuss if it's better or worse than that it's taken the place up from 2023. That's coming up next as we continue on with a Thursday Locked On Vols. One of the proud sponsors of the show, one of the longtime sponsors of the Locked On Podcast Network, that is our friends, FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. The sports calendar, it's loaded, and FanDuel makes it even more exciting to get in on all that action. Because right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200. You can spend, betting on the tournament, Final Four, Major League Baseball. That season has officially begun. National Basketball Association. The playoffs are going to be here before you know it. The NHL, NASCAR on the weekends, and so much more. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, and new customers can get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's all at FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. More to come, Tennessee football talk here on the other side. This is Locked On Vols. All right, guys, welcome back into your Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. We're towards the end of the week. I'm your host, Eric Cain. Appreciate you guys, as always, for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every day. So, want to revisit a little bit of a subject. I think I did this. Maybe I dreamed that I did this a couple of weeks ago, earlier in the winter. I want to compare each Tennessee position group to where they're at now compared to the one in 2023 for the season. Now, a lot of this, and I know that you might not want to hear this, some of this is going to be wait and see. I'll still give you a better or worse, but a lot of this is going to be wait and see because we truly just don't know. Because I've never seen any of these guys outside of Ricky Gibson, Andre Turrentine, and Jordan Thomas a little bit play in the defensive secondary. Haven't seen it. Hadn't seen Jalen McMurray. What's he going to look like coming over from Temple? Jermon McCoy, who I think is going to be a stud. How does he adapt to SEC play? Jacoby Thomas coming up from the Sun Belt to the SEC. I just don't know. And we're not going to know that until they start playing in games. But I do think that this is a fun exercise. And what we know now, midway through or towards the end of week 3 of Tennessee spring practice, they're going to scrimmage late tonight. Not late tonight. We'll be meeting with Josh Heupel around 9:30. They're going to scrimmage about 7 or 7:30 at night. It's going to be cold at Neyland Stadium, but that's kind of where they're at right now. So let's take a look at this, position group by position group. Starting out at quarterback, will Nico this year be better than what Joe was last year? In my opinion, the answer is yes. I think Nico's a better athlete. I think the upside's so much higher, obviously. I think he's more of a skilled athlete outside of the pocket. How does he adapt? How does his decision-making continue to progress? All that and more. It's going to be, we don't know yet. But I feel pretty confident right now in saying that the offense with Nico Iamaleava is going to be better than what it was with Joe Milton. And that's not, again, a conversation for a different day. That's not to say that Joe Milton was horrible. Think of the quarterbacks that's been here at Tennessee over the last 15 years. And people wanted to say Joe Milton was so bad. Come on, guys. Spoiled here lately. You had 2 years of Hendon Hooker, and he was fantastic. I recognize Joe Milton is not Hendon Hooker, but you had Keller Chris taking meaningful snaps for your football team. You had Jared Garantano, who started for 4 years for your program. I mean, you had Matt Sims playing. I mean, come on, guys. There's been some bad quarterback play here the last couple 10, 15 years. I'm not saying that Joe Milton, this is a tangent here. I'm going on a monologue here, but I'm not saying that Joe Milton was Hendon Hooker because he was not. But Joe Milton clearly was not as bad as everybody wants to make him out to be. But having said that, for Tennessee to be a playoff team, it needed to be better. And I think Tennessee can get there with Nico Iamaleava. So for the quarterback position, I will say better. At running back, I'm going to say worse. That does not mean that it's going to be bad. Tennessee has ran the football so well under Josh Heupel here at Tennessee. But Jalen Wright is not walking back through that door. Jabari Small, who's been so good, he was a good running back for Tennessee. He had a good career. Little 3-star scat back out of Memphis, Tennessee, had a really, really good career. But he's gone, left the program right now. Cam Seldon's still unproven. He's hurt right now. Peyton Lewis you like, but he's a true freshman. It's a tryout period for Khalifa Keith and Deshaun Bishop right now. Whole lot of inexperience behind Dylan Sampson, who I think's really good, but he's never been the lead back. So I think Tennessee's running backs can be fine, but I'm going to say worse right now because Tennessee's running backs, that group was so good last year. Same with tight ends. I think the upside is so much higher for Tennessee's tight ends with Holden Stays and Ethan Davis. But Holden Stays never played in the SEC. Ethan Davis has never played meaningful snaps. I think they'll be fine, but it's a lot of newness for Tennessee at that position, the tight end position. So for right now, I'll say worse, but that is very much a wait and see. Wide receivers, I'm going to go ahead and say better. And I completely missed last year on the wide receivers. I thought the wide receiver group was going to be not going to skip a beat. It certainly did. The wide receiver group was not good last year. Brew coming back healthy. Squirrel White coming off a big year that he had. Dante Thornton, who's having a really, really good spring. Chris Brazel, who's the new kid in the bunch, and he's coming along each and every practice. Mike Matthews, who's doing things as a true freshman. Braylon Staley, who's doing things as a true freshman. Oh, yeah, and Jazz Nimrod and Caleb Webb, who are carrying themselves as starters. Kelsey Pope, Tennessee wide receivers coach, he met with the media on Wednesday and said, we've had 9 practices. We've had 9 different combinations of wide receivers with the first team. Deep group. I hope they play more than just 3. I'm going to go out, not even on a limb, in my opinion. That group's going to be much better than the group of 2023. And then the offensive line. Still very much looking for a left guard. And that question is not answered right now. And it won't be answered until probably about a week before kickoff. I like the top 5 options, including Dane Davis, across the board. But after that, Tennessee has no depth. And you look around the country, there's not a whole lot of tackle depth around the country either. So how does Tennessee kind of fulfill that? Do some guys step up and kind of take on those roles that you can be counted on when, and I don't even want to say when, I don't want to say if, it's more of a win because it's college football, people get banged up, you're called on. I have some serious questions about the depth of Tennessee's offensive line, but Lance Hurd's going to be a stud. John Campbell's a pretty good tackle. Cooper May is going to be a 4-year starter in the SEC. Javonte Spraggins going to be a 4-year starter in the SEC. Even with the hole at left guard right now, and say that is Dane Davis to begin the season. I like that group. So I need to see the depth behind him. This is kind of a wait and see because of the depth questions, but I'm going to say better because I like the high-end potential of this offensive line. And last year's offensive line, though it was far from perfect, though it had a guard playing center the first 4 weeks, it's pretty good. Quickly move the defense. At the Leo position, I'll say better. And you might be saying, well, how in the world can James Pierce top what he did last year? That's a good question. I don't know if he'll technically top it stat-wise. Dude had 10 sacks. But he'll be playing more because you want to have Roman Harrison in there. And so for that reason alone, I'll say the Leo position is better. James Pierce, Joshua Josephs, Caleb Herring. I love that group. Defensive line, again, defensive tackle, defensive end. They're going to play 10 to 14 guys. So many of those guys are returning. You lose Tyler Barron, and I'm not going to act like Tyler Barron wasn't productive because he was. He had 6 sacks last year. But I think Tennessee's defensive line is going to be fine. I would say they're going to be better. They're all a year older, and you pretty much return everybody. Linebackers, I'm going to say better. Aaron Beasley was not himself last year. I think he played hurt pretty much the entire year. Keenan Peely missed the whole season outside of the season opener. And those young guys who are forced to play are going to be better a year later, in my opinion. So I have no qualms of going out there and saying right now that the linebacker position is going to be better. So linebacker better. The star position, Tamari McDonald was not bad. There were some durability concerns there, as is with Jordan Thomas, who's going to be starting there this year. But why I like the star position better, and I'll say it's better right now compared to 2023, is because you have Jordan Thomas, who I think is just as good, if not better, than Tamari McDonald, who was taking the place of. But also, if you're not on the field, you have Boo Carter, and I think Boo Carter is a playmaker. So I'm going to say the star position is better. The safety and cornerback position for right now, I'm going to say worse because, again, I need to see those guys play. There's just so much unknown there, like I said previously in the segment. But I do think that they're quicker and they're more athletic. And I think that they have the potential to be better. So that is very much a wait and see. Because at least you knew what you had in Jalen McCullough, who was always going to lead your defense. He was going to get everybody in position. He was going to be in position to make a play. You knew what you had in some of those guys. And I mean, I thought Kamal Hamlin's a really, really good cornerback. Cornerback and safety, I'll say worse for now. But I do think that there's great, great potential to be better. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'd love to hear your impact, or I'd love to hear your feedback on that. Quarterback better, running back worse, tight end worse, wait and see. Wide receivers better, O-line better, wait and see. Leo better, defensive line better, linebacker better, star better, safety and cornerback worse, but very much a wait and see. Tennessee will scrimmage tonight. We'll come back and practice next week, and then it's orange and white game time. That's coming up next Saturday, and of course, we'll break it all down right here on Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, making the case for Tennessee to be a college football playoff contender, playoff team. That's what On3's Andy Staples and Jesse Simonton did. I'm going to tell you what they had to say, all that and more. It's coming up next as we continue on with your Thursday Locked On Vols. All right, guys, Fire TV, it is your destination for sports. Live games, the highlights, in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as a Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV also created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On, the most of the big pro leagues and the college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to date on the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV on the Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Making the case for Tennessee to be a college football playoff team coming up next, right here on Locked On Vols. All right, guys, one more segment left here of this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. I am Eric Cain. Appreciate you for being here. Going to take part of the conversation from my On3 coworkers, more of a national level. Of course, I'm here local in Tennessee, in Knoxville, Tennessee. But Andy Staples, that's a name that you guys know. He does his the Andy Staples Show every day on YouTube, on the On3 YouTube channel. And he had on Jesse Simonton, formerly of VolQuest, but also working for On3 as well. And they were discussing some of these second-tier SEC teams and kind of making the case for these second-tier SEC teams in the expanded 12-team college football playoff. Remember, it's 12 teams this year. And then next year, it's likely going to expand to 14 teams. So gone are the days of one loss ruining a season. Sometimes, if you're in the SEC, one loss did not ruin your four-team college football playoff hopes either. But teams that lose one game, even two games, if you're still ranked inside the top 15, you have a great chance to make the expanded college football playoff field. And Tennessee is in one of those teams that probably isn't vying to win the SEC this year in most people's minds, but can still make the college football playoff field to play for a chance of a national championship. So we're going to make this case several times over the offseason, but On3's Andy Staples and Jesse Simonton did that earlier this week. This is from Andy Staples. So we said, Missouri and Tennessee, those are two high expectations teams. If they exceed expectations even slightly, we're talking about playoff teams. Do you feel like they could do this? And Jesse Simonton replied, yes, and he also included Ole Miss. He said, they're in my cookie jar of very good, probably not great. I think that's where I land on those teams. I have Ole Miss in that category as well. When they make the case for Tennessee, this is what Staples kind of has to say. Tennessee saw them last week. He did. He was on campus. He watched the entirety. Lucky him, right? He watched the entirety of Tennessee's first scrimmage. Got to see every play. I'm very jealous of that. But this is Andy Staples talking. See, Tennessee saw them last week. Super deep on the defensive line. Deeper in the secondary than we thought they were going to be. Deeper at receiver than we probably thought they were going to be. They need some injury luck on the offensive line. They need to stay healthy on the offensive line to be as good as they can be. But I feel like that's a team that can play with anybody if Nico is as good as we think he's going to be. And I would agree with all that. Tennessee's not going anywhere unless Nico is exactly who we think Nico is going to be, who we think Nico was as the number one player in the country in the class of 2023, former 5-star quarterback, rumored $8 million man, all that. If Tennessee's going to have a chance to be a college football playoff contender, Nico's got to hit. I mean, that's simple, right? But also, he brings up a great point on the offensive line. As I talked about in the prior segment, I like the front five options, whether Dane Davis is starting or he's that swing man. I love the front five options. got to find a left guard, and you got to stay healthy. And that's what worries me right now. Because unlike in years past, when you have a Dane Davis to come in or Jeremiah Crawford to come in or so on and so forth, this year you'll potentially have a Dane Davis, a Jackson Lampley, and we'll see if anybody else emerges. They've got to stay healthy on the offensive line. Deeper at wide receiver, I would agree with that because the wide receiver group has been so good this spring. And then deeper in the secondary, that's good to hear from him. I think that they're very pleased with McCoy, Thomas, Jalen McMurray. But again, it's kind of like I got to see it to believe it. That's kind of where I'm at on the secondary. But that was what Andy Staples had to say. Jesse Simonton goes on and talks about kind of the two pillars that are most important for any football team, and that's a quarterback, and that's a guy that can get after the quarterback. It says, quote, if you're going to make the argument for the Vols, you say, hey, if Nico's transcendent and you have a guy like James Pierce on the other side, perhaps the best individual defensive player in the SEC in 2024, is that the formula? Can you survive enough? He goes on to say about the wide receivers, you said the offensive line, I like the receiver room. Got Brew McCoy back, you get a Nico, or you get a nice transfer from Tulane and Chris Brazzell, Squirrel White. There's at least some elements that you can make the case, and I could hear it if you lay it out again. Again, I'd have them in the cookie jar, very good, but probably not great. So I would agree with a whole lot of this. Is Tennessee going to be viewed the same as Georgia going into this season? No. Is Tennessee going to be viewed the same as some of these other teams around the country who were, Ohio State or, I don't know. Alabama's still going to be viewed pretty highly, right, going into the season. There's obviously some other teams. Are they going to be viewed in that national championship contender or maybe favorite conversation? No. But are they going to be viewed as a team that can make a run to the playoffs and make some noise? Absolutely. And I love this point that Jesse brought up because it's how you build your roster. It's how the NFL builds your roster in free agency. It's how you build it through the draft. It's how you're now seeing rosters, not only in traditional recruiting, but in the NIL world of the college landscape being constructed as well. Quarterback, getting after the quarterback. If Nico is who we think Nico is, check. If we know who James Pierce is, we've seen it, check. If those are two pillars that you are basing your entire team on, holding up your team, sure, you need help on the offensive line. You need to run the football. But those are two pretty daggone good pillars that you can hang your hat on and say, all right, Tennessee's going to be a dangerous team because you got Nico, you got James Pierce. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Good stuff there. We'll see what Tennessee does. Obviously, we'll have this conversation 7 more times over the offseason, but it's a fun one to have. Expanded playoffs. It means your team has an opportunity more so than it ever has to play for a national championship. And I'm so pumped for this offseason. I'm so pumped for next football season. And it is only April the 4th. But appreciate you guys for being here. As always, as I've ended the shows this week, apologizing for my stupid voice. It's never going to get better until I rest it. But, got to pay the bills. Got to churn out some content. Got to churn out some shows. And that's where I'm at. Hopefully my voice will get better tomorrow and especially over the weekend. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen. Thanks so much for being here. Again, it's free, guys. Follow us, download us, subscribe to us for free. YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And let's get the show out in front of more and more Tennessee fans as we venture on throughout the offseason. Guys, thank you so much. We'll come back for a Feel Good Friday show. This is Locked On Vols.